Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at the natal chart of Keith Richards, who is the lead guitarist for the Rolling Stones. And at the time of this recording, Keith is about to turn 78 years old. Now, I'm recording this in October 2021, so obviously people are listening at different times. And as of this recording, Charlie Watts, the drummer, has in recent months passed away, which was very sad to hear about that. And I believe he was 80. Okay, so here we have Keith Richards pushing 78, and all kinds of remarks, jokes, whatever you want to call it, have been made about Keith Richards having such longevity as it is. Keith developed quite a reputation about being involved with drugs because he had several well-publicized busts, drug busts. And, especially at times when it was very heavily prosecuted, but luckily he didn't have to go to prison for long periods of time, and he was able to go into rehab as a condition of his release, or whatever you call it, at least on one of those occasions, maybe a couple. But he did have a problem with hard drugs, and based on recent interviews that I've watched with him, he seems like he still likes to, I don't know if it's drinking or what, he sounds like he likes to have a few drinks. So anyway, the point is that he's associated with partying heartily. And so I wanted to look at his chart and say, okay, is there something that can prove that? And also just in general about his basic nature, and maybe if there's any kind of proof or what we could link to in his chart that would have anything to do with being a rock star. So first of all, let's look at his personal points. He has a sun in Sagittarius, and Sagittarians tend to be quite rebellious. And so if they are going to have a profession, they, obviously I'm sure there are Sagittarians who are file clerks, but they tend to be very flamboyant. There's just something about it that's larger than life. I'd say all fire signs is that love of anything creative, anything that is anti-establishment or, against the grain, that allows for independence. So another thing that we can look at too is the midheaven, and that's the cusp of the 10th house of career. And you can see that there's the initials MC. I believe that's a Latin version of the term midheaven. And this is in Virgo of all places. So I'm like, oh man, how do I spin this one? Because Virgo is so not what you would expect with show business or anything like that. And how I would spin this, actually Virgo is the ruler of the 6th house of work, but the actual work itself. And it's the house of health, and it's the house of it's the house of pets, but we don't have to go there. But anyway, what I think this means is that Keith approaches his career like it's his job. So even though it's in the entertainment field, he's not just looking at it like, okay, I'm in the entertainment field and I can just be self-indulgent and I can just kind of mail it in and I can get away with all of this because I'm famous and all of this. The 10th house can be fame and all that. Now, that means that the person may value hard work and being grounded when it comes to their career. And I don't know if it was Keith or whether it was Mick Jagger, but they were talking about this idea of the old bluesmen that would, you know, be touring and playing when they were in their 80s. Like, in other words, it's a job, but it's almost like a lifelong occupation. And so it doesn't have a shelf life, and there's just this feeling of doing it forever. So maybe that's where the Virgo comes in. But anyway, it's like not flashy and things like that. And certainly, I'm sure Keith might have been filmed, or, you know, people took pictures of him at Studio 54, or whatever you want to call it. But I still believe that he wasn't trying to be this jet-setting, you know, self-indulgent person. He might have been self-indulgent, and he may have rubbed shoulders with famous people, but I think he still harbored that work ethic, because another thing is his moon is in Virgo. So he has a sun in Sag, but he has a moon in Virgo. I actually have this combination, and if you do, I just did a video on that, so that's on my channel, if you have that combination of sun and moon. And one of the things I said in that video is that you might feel inhibited. You might not feel like you can really let that Sagittarius out, that wild horse out. It's funny, they did a song called Wild Horses. You know, there is a lot of, what's the term? Self-consciousness that comes with the moon in Virgo. And what's interesting about Keith is that he isn't the front man. I mean, yes, he's on stage, and yes, he's a prominent member of the band, but he's not usually singing any of the songs. He has sung a couple, including the song, I believe it was a hit called Happy. But in any case, perhaps that is one of the reasons why he does imbibe. Maybe he does imbibe before he drinks, because of that kind of inhibition. I don't know. No, I'm not accusing him of drinking before he does a concert. I'm just saying that if so, that would be the reason why. And that means that you can, you know, do it. And the thing about it is his sun and moon are not close enough to be a square. So that may lessen some of those negative traits that would clash because they form that square. So that can be quite good, as a matter of fact. Now, I was just kind of like looking at Wikipedia to get some kind of ideas about certain aspects of his life, and they were saying that he wants to be a librarian, and he's just a very vociferous reader, or voracious. I said vociferous, voracious reader, and certainly there's intellect that is associated with Sag and with Virgo. And he also has Mars in Gemini. And so Mars can be that drive, can be for knowledge, it can be for just words, you know, really loving that. Both he and Mick Jagger wrote wrote the lyrics to the songs, and some of them are really quite good. You know, you wouldn't at first glance, because they seem so macho and they're hard rock, that they could write poetry, but they have done so, and some of it has been Keith's doing. I think he wrote the lyrics to Ruby Tuesday. You know how they would credit it to both of them, just like the Beatles, but just like the Beatles, a lot of those songs they wrote individually. So having a way with words, being able to or enjoying reading extensively can be part of this. There can be a blocked warmth. The person may have a sense of being Well, that would be more. I'm not gonna say that because that would be more of like if it was a square. So what I'll say is that the person may be warm on a certain level, but with the moon in Virgo, there is the desire to be more of assistance to others. So if he is, I think with Keith though, because he has Venus in Virgo and he has Scorpio rising. So he has a definite Scorpio signature. His rulers must be Mars and Pluto. And oh, there you go. That's probably part of the reason why he has such longevity. He also has Saturn in the eighth house. Saturn is father time. The eighth house can be about death, so it can be that the person lives to a ripe old age. And certainly he has been showing this. But also, when you're ruled by Mars and Pluto, you can, you might have a sense of crisis in your life. Maybe that's a theme of your life, but you can, be the cat with 9 lives. And so I'm just going through the rest of this. As Mercury is in Capricorn, that's the way he thinks, so he might think in a more traditional way. He has Venus in Scorpio. He did marry a woman who is a Pisces, so there's that water element. They say men should look to their Venus to see what type of woman they're attracted to. Now, here you have somebody who's a sun sign in fire element, Sag, who married a water sign, and his Venus is in water, so that could be why he actually was attracted and why he picked such a person. I'm just looking here. There was something I wanted to say, and I forgot. Oh, what I want to say is that your rising sign can affect how you dress and how you look. And if you look at Mick Jagger, if you look at Keith Richards, he has kind of a swarthy complexion. His skin tone is not like pale white. He's got kind of like a little tone to his skin. He has a little bit of coloring to it, and he's got dark hair. He also has, he just has that kind of he has a bit of a scorpionic look to him. But the thing that really amused me is that when I found out he was Scorpio rising, it made total sense because if you look at him, he loves rings that have skulls on them. And that's very scorpionic because it kind of alludes to death. And even the clothing, it seems like he wears a lot of black. Of course, a lot of rock stars wear black, but you know what I mean. It just seems like he has embraced some of that gothic or whatever you want to call it type of dress and so on and so forth. And in his second house of earned income, he has the sun and he has Mercury. I can't remember. I just did Mick Jagger, and I think he had the sun in the second house. So this is Taurus's house. This is about making money. So the person who starts a rock band, they're not doing it for a hobby when they have this placement. They're doing it for making money. And the sun here it can be a creative force, but it's also creative in terms of creating abundance. And the reason that this is an important thing is that I feel like it can ground a person who may otherwise have a tendency to be a little bit wild and not all that organized in their life, or, well, organized isn't a good word, but things aren't completely calm and aspects. This can kind of ground that type of person. His Mercury is here as well, and like I said, it's in Capricorn, so there might be a part of him that's very traditional and that believes in whatever the authorities say about something. And in any case, this can also be good for money. The person may have a good head for figures. They may have the ability to really manage their money well. So regardless of how much they have, like, now I'm sure he's got, so much money he doesn't know what to do with it. But at a time, those particular rock stars, even though they were making a lot of money, they were also getting cheated by their companies. So I don't know exactly about the stones, how that went. I can't remember. I know the Beatles had issues with that. But this makes it less likely because the person might even take an active role in their finances. Like some people, some of these movie stars and musicians or singers, they probably were very hands-off because they might not have been practical types of people. They were artistic, and they just took the advice of a financial advisor, and they didn't check up on things, and they got ripped off. But this is the position of somebody that is probably not that into such behavior, is maybe either very conservative about it or at least, maybe has a hands-on approach to their finances. Something that jumps out at me as an aspect is his Mars and Uranus forming a conjunction. This is like having Mars in Aquarius, and he does have his Mars actually in Gemini. And so Gemini being the sign of, the literary, the communication, his freedom came in going towards words and ideas and communication. And he has it he has this conjunction in the 7th house. This is the house of committed partnership, but it's also the house of public relations. I don't know the true difference between public relations in the 7th and the 10th house being about your public reputation. Seems like they would be quite similar. Maybe it's the way the person goes about it or their persona, how they're seen. Of course, the 1st house can be your persona, but how they're seen by the public. This really is the person who is a rebel. And people just say, oh man, Keith is effing cool. He's always, I talked to my partner who's 11 years older than I am and who saw the stones when he was, I don't know if he was still in high school, but in the early 70s when they were really, I think he was in high school. It's like 72. He saw them when they were in their heyday. They're still definitely a top tier band, but they're not in that heyday per se. And it's just, so people can see him in that light of being very going against the grain, doing his own thing, and all of that. And that certainly enhances the legendary status of a rock star. What's interesting is his stellium in the 9th house, and this is the God house. And, sometimes you do these charts and you're like, I wonder if this person had other things going on that are just not what we are privy to. Because if you have Scorpio rising, you will tend to be quite secretive. And you don't necessarily let everybody know where you're coming from. So in his 9th house, he has the moon, Jupiter, and Pluto. And he also has the North Node here. The North Node in his chart is in, wait for it, the sign of Leo. So there you go. That's the performer, the showman. In the 9th house, it could be international. It could be that this person is known all over the world. It's like a global operation at this point. That's what that could mean. But seeing as he has the moon here as well as Pluto, there could be fervent religious beliefs. I did read some of his autobiography called Me, and I don't remember him talking about that specifically. In typical Keith fashion, there was it was thought to be a rumor, but I think it turned out to be the case that he snorted his father's ashes, which is, what a, gruesome concept. But I think he said something like he wanted to have that experience of absorbing his father, having him close to him, something like that. And I mean, these kinds of behaviors and ideas. It's funny because Saturn is in that house of death, the 8th house. But I wonder if that has to do with Venus in the 12th house, because and that's another thing too. Venus in the 12th is like having Venus in Pisces, but I wonder if it even can attract you to a Pisces partner, and his wife is a Pisces. But in general, there is a very boundaryless, sacrificial quality to people who have Venus in the 12th house. And this sense, it's in Scorpio, so it's a water sign in a water house. Very emotional, very intense in terms of their one-on-one relationships. So that's really something. But just like looking at that 9th house, it's like, maybe this is something he does when he's alone, or he's just having these visions. The moon in the 9th house could be somebody who is very in love with or emotionally attached to some deity. And so it could be Mother Mary, it could be some archangel, whoever. And in the 10th house, he has Chiron and Neptune, which is interesting as well. He also has a square between the Sun and Neptune. So this can indicate some kind of, what we would say, the Sun square Neptune can mean that the person has a hard time knowing who they are. And, whether or not that's like the end of the world is anyone's guess, because it's most likely not going to be. And if the person is philosophical, which I think he is, he can find some way to accept the fact that he doesn't feel like the strong sense of who he is. Like it might not really matter to him at the end of the day. And both of these, well, Chiron is an asteroid, but both of these placements in the 10th house can make the person very sacrificial, meaning that they are really concerned with other people's well-being. So it's placement of the natural healer, and it just is really good for those kind of pursuits that are related to art. Neptune and Chiron can be artistic pursuits or even spiritual pursuits. And yeah, his Venus is in the 12th house. And typically, it is said that Venus is connected to love and beauty, but also how you make money. So again, this is a house of the spiritual, and it could be somebody who makes their living through that. And I think that he's a lot more traditional than people give him credit for. He might have a rebellious streak, but I was reading the biography or autobiography of one of the Stones' wives. I think she was his wife, other bandmate. And she was talking about how Keith was such a gentleman. And he wasn't like just hitting on women. He actually was talking to them as fellow human beings. And fire sign men can be quite good about being treating women as equals, even though it seems like it would be counterintuitive to believe that, because they're masculine signs. And also, if you think about the Stones and what they write about, they seem very macho in that sense. But this can actually be the case where the person is really, the kind of man who he looks at a woman as a fellow human being, not as a sex object. And that was the thing. This woman said that he wasn't kind of coming on to her. She could really talk to him. And yeah, I think his water element is good for that. And I think too that with these sensitive placements in the 10th house, that such a person is like a natural healer, whatever it is that they're doing for career, even if it's not in the professional sense of the word. And so I'm going to leave it there. I hope that this made you think about Keith in a different way. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.